In the past week, the High Command of the Nigerian Army carried out an extensive change of guards at several key military formations, even as the battles on to bring worsening spate of insecurity around the country under control. Terrorists and bandits have been unrelenting in their determined assault against the Nigerian state, especially in the past 2 years. And at a time that President Buhari appears to be eagerly counting down his last days as Nigeria's leader. But while all of that plays out, the Nigerian Senate, especially the opposition caucus, is at the moment being criticized for serving an impeachment notice on the president and almost immediately electing to jump off on a 6-week recess. Joining us now to have a discussion about this and a lot more is Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, a public affairs analyst and head mass communications at Base University, Abuja. Good morning, Prof. Always good to have you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, Steve. Thanks for bringing me over.
Absolutely.
Good morning, Adefemi, and good morning, Jinx.
I knew you were going to say good morning, Jinx. Good morning. How are you? How are you this morning?
How is Jinx? Is Jinx spelled with an X at the end or is it a K?
It's with an X.
Yes. Jinx. Very well. Okay.
We won't deal with the issue of Genix today.
Not right now.
We leave that to Dr. Abati
Yes.
and Prof. All right, let's start with the lawmakers, Prof. How much of seriousness do you attach to this whole noise about impeachment, or do you think that they're just playing to the gallery? You are trying to impeach, commence an impeachment process, and then you are out of the National Assembly for 6 weeks. So Nigerians are worried. They are not taking it, in the way that, with the seriousness that it deserves, thinking that the lawmakers are not very serious. Do you think that this is about the fact that danger is now knocking on the door in Abuja because they didn't raise any impeachment proceedings against the president, with ASU strike going to 6 months, with Naira falling so badly, now at 7.30 or 7.20 as at Friday? They didn't raise any issue about the state of the economy. But then when danger knocked on Abuja, they decided to raise their voice. What do you make of all this and the sincerity or seriousness in what the lawmakers are asking for?
Okay, Steve, there are so many ways in which you can unpack this. First, I do know that the National Assembly often go on an annual recess, about the second half of the year. Remember, I used to be a National Assembly correspondent, and of course, we're watchers of the activities of the National Assembly. Around this time, July, August, September, they all often go on an annual recess. So it is possible to say that the impeachment notice is coinciding with the time of their recess. And let's not forget that the impeachment move, was made by the opposition. And from all intent and purposes, from their pronouncement, I think they mean it. They mean it, and it was coming against the wake of the tension generated in Abuja as a result of the obvious threat, to the peace of the purpose-built capital. And let's also remember the effect of negative reports on the human psychology. It can be very disturbing. And of course, yes, I agree with you that there have been some previous issues that should have warranted the interest of the National Assembly, but sometimes it's about gravity, it's about intensity. And of course, when life becomes threatened, involved, when your ability to exist, is being threatened, like the terrorists were trying to prove recently, it becomes more disturbing. And of course, it probably jolted everyone, including the National Assembly members, which was why they moved into talking about impeachment. So impeachment this time, I think it will serve, discussions around impeachment will serve some multiple purposes. One, it's likely going to provoke, or maybe is probably a wake-up call for the president himself if there has been some lethargy, whether consciously or unconsciously, or if they wanted to take 2 steps, and the threat of impeachment could make them to take 4 more steps, so that we can see some movement, some more serious action towards protecting the capital. But overall, I don't think it's something that will eventually pull through, because to impeach a president in this country is not going to be easy. If you look at it, even the legalese of it is very, very cumbersome. We may not necessarily have to go into it. I want to leave that to the lawyers, but from my cursory understanding, cursory learning of it, I know it's very, very cumbersome, very, 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 very elongated. And that's why the second aspect of it is that our democracy is still very fragile. We live in a tepid country, where our classifiers are deep-seated. When matters of impeachment begin to come to the fore, all kinds of emotions and sentiments will play up. And we do not have the institutions yet to withstand the shock of a presidential impeachment. And how about the fact that, the man just has barely less than a year to live. Even if you look at the legalese of it, it will take another 6-7 months before you pull through the process, Then what about the fact that it will distract us from the business of fighting the terrorists themselves, the insurgents themselves, the kidnappers themselves? The impeachment process can be very time-consuming, cumbersome, like I said, and of course, it will distract us from the main argument, the main reason why he wants to be, he should be impeached in the first instance. So if you put all this together, you will just see that it probably is going to serve, more importantly, the purpose of being a wake-up call, something that should jolt the president to action, if he has been on bed, in the last couple of months, or if he has been fiddling in the last couple of weeks while Rome is on fire.
Righty, Professor. I did want to speak to you still on this topic of what this minority group in the Senate tried to do. And it obviously had reverberations, whether or not it actually results in the president being impeached. Some people say it's unlikely, but we know it's not impossible. What I do want to hear from you, though, is your thoughts on the response to their actions. Femi Adesina made a comment that they were a minority of a minority and almost belittled their efforts, belittled their standing points, while some could argue that perhaps they are trying to stand on a soapbox, perhaps they're trying to distance themselves from what they think is a sinking ship. But why do you think, if at all, that was the correct way to respond to senators calling for some sort of change since the insecurity situation in this country has worsened to this extent?
Yeah, thank you, Adefemi. I think, ordinarily, if you look at it, the senators were actually right, even if they are opposition members. But of course, we also knew that it wasn't going to something that will not pull through because they are in the minority, yes, But of course, sometimes democracy, we sometimes argue, it's a government, it's a system where the majority, are tyrannical over the minority. It doesn't matter the wisdom in their move, but it is what it is, and of course, we'll continue to take it the way it is. But for the reaction of the president and from the spokesman that you mentioned, sometimes some of these things can be a function of understanding, a function of mood, and a function of disposition at some particular points in time. Sometimes I also believe that spokespersons are in very, very difficult positions. They are trying to pander to the wishes of their principal. Sometimes they may not even have access to this principal, but they are also under pressure not to make mistakes, not just to please their principal, but of course those who are around their principal. And by the time they come to the public, sometimes you just look, you want to even sympathize with them because they are performing better than ordinarily they should, the way they should have been. And these are people that in terms of professionalism, they did very well while they were in practice. But when it gets to government, because of the pressure of work, pressure to satisfy this and that, to pander to the wishes of principals, they begin to behave like incompetent people, people who don't know the right words to deploy in some circumstances. So it's a shame, very unfortunate when we see this kind of a thing. But for me, I ordinarily want to sympathize with them. When somebody of that caliber, former president, Nigerian Guild of Editors, an editor of a newspaper, a managing director, he got to the heights, that any professional would want to get to in journalism. and he dismissed a prominent activist like Femi Falana as an anarchist. I just feel that's not in the extreme, but again, I want to sympathize with him, but it's because he's probably trying to satisfy his principle. But in trying to satisfy as well, sometimes it is good to be circumspect. So he's reducing the move by the Senate to begin an impeachment process, forcing that light as well, trying to defend in the extreme, but like I said, he has my sympathy. He's a very brilliant person. He writes very well. And he's also human. He might make some error from time to time, but we just need to forgive him.
Okay, Professor Adeniyi, I wanted to touch on other topics that made headlines this week. I'd like your thoughts on Governor Wike's recent outburst while expressing his grouse with Atiku Abubakar, accusing him of lying during the Arise TV interview. This Day is reporting on its cover story today that the governor of Jigawa State, Malam Sule Lamido, has advised Wike to emulate others like, VP Osibajo, Senate President Ahmad Lawal, even Rotimi Amechi, who have shown maturity when they lost the presidential tickets of their parties. Now, Lamido also described Wike as uncultured, saying that it is wrong for a younger person like Wike to say that an older person like Atiku Abubakar is lying. Now, what are your thoughts on that statement? And do you think Governor Wike is perhaps out of line?
Well, eugenics, I think, in political atmosphere like this, we are going to continue to have this kind of broadsides, this kind of exchanges, especially between people whose temper you say are choleric. Governor Wike, for instance, is a blunt-speaking person. He's somebody that necessarily does not suffer fools gladly. He speaks his mind irrespective of whose ox is God. And sometimes when we are expecting him to keep quiet, he won't keep quiet. He's that kind of person that you ordinarily may even want to feel very safe with him because he's not going to bear any grudge against you. He's not going to keep anything in his mind against you. He will tell you the way he feels and allow the entire thing to be resolved. He doesn't bottle up things from my reading of him, from my knowing him, from my knowledge of him in the public sphere. That's how I see him really. And of course, if on the other side you also have somebody like Alhaji Sule Lamido, who is also can be also very, very blunt and tempestuous, speaks his mind, you definitely will have a tangle. So when two similar characteristics meet like that, you are likely going to have a tangle. So that's what we're seeing. To us, it can be very, very entertaining, but again, it can be very distracting, because the most important business of statecraft, might be missing in the matrix, which is a disadvantage to the people of the country that the politicians have come out in the first instance to serve. But this kind of thing will continue. Well, for the governor as well to have referred to the former vice president as a liar, I think that word lie, I think is slightly uncivil, slightly discourteous, irrespective of the cultural implication of it, like Lamido is trying to portray. But again, we can look at it from the bigger context of anger. It's probably provoked, and the provocation is not just momentous, not just episodic, but it's built up over the period. Period of silence, period of momentary reticence. Then he's now just busting up now. And we can see it within that context and expect some more of these broadsides between these politicians. It's not going to abate, because from what is even happening now, it doesn't look as if Governor Wike is going to wholeheartedly support Vice President Atiku in his presidential bid. So these exchanges will continue, and I think we should just guide our loans and be ready for them. However, it's going to pan out at the end of the day. But most importantly, while they are hitting themselves, they should remember, the ultimate business of governance, which is why they have said they want to be in leadership position. They should be telling us about principles and policies that they're going to pursue by the time they get into government, and those of them that are about to leave or that are still in government, should not lose sight, their vision and mission, to meet the yearnings and aspirations of the people. That's what I think is most important, Oji.
All right, Prof. The army has been showing some response, strategic response to the danger that we are facing, moving GOCs about, which is strategic. One, what do you make of their intervention? I mean, this will look like it's going to be a battle between the Nigerian security forces, especially the army, and the terrorists. And then, do you think what do you make out of the points that people are saying about the fact that crime entrepreneurs might be behind all this? In other words, are we witnessing a real insurgency or terror from bandits, or is this all calculated towards the 2023 elections? If you recall, we faced similar things in 2013, 2014, even in the early weeks of 2015 that necessitated the postponement of the general elections at that time. Are we at that juncture again where insecurity becomes curated by those who are perpetrators of anarchy? And let me ask you also pointedly, do you feel safe in Abuja at the moment? I've been reading quite a bit from our friend and brother Gbenga Aruleba, and it's worrisome. How is Abuja, and how do you feel personally being there at this point?
Well, Steve, maybe I should start from the last part of your question.
Yeah.
I think I feel very, very safe in Abuja. There is absolutely no problem. What we are seeing is just what Shakespeare would call full of sound and fury, but that signifies nothing at the end of the day. And of course, there are reasons for these. When you are in a distance, it can also be explained within a theoretical understanding of the psychology of absence. And I think I alluded to this slightly. When you're in a distance, your understanding of a breaking story is often exaggerated, slightly expanded. But by the time you get close to that location where the story is emanating from, you will now see reality becomes closer to you. So that's what absence does, And of course, remember what I said earlier, that memories, are much more become tenser with the negative. So when you are saying something that is negative coming out for once, like we have had here in Abuja a couple of times, you just think that it is much more than it truly is. And of course, remember what somebody once said again, that it just takes the terrorists. The terrorists just have to be right once, but government or the military will have to be right all the time. But once the terrorist is right once, then of course we are all shut down at the level of imagination. Our imaginations are captured, fear comes in, anxiety comes in. But of course, we have to also learn to deal with our emotions, our sentiments, and realize that these things are not the way it is being portrayed. And that's why you see some people who live abroad, they become scared of even coming to Nigeria as a whole, or even coming to Africa, because they think that in Africa or in Nigeria is war every day, is killings every day. But of course, many of us live here, and nothing happens. People are also inversely afraid. Some people are afraid of, for instance, of going to America, sometimes because they just believe that America is a place where you can be shot anytime by anybody, and it's not like that. People still live in America. People go and come back in America. So it's about balances and trying to manage our fear, manage our expectations around the negative. So having said that, I think we have also made a point in the past that the way the government have been dealing with the human element, the human resource angle of managing this war has been problematic, and how has it been so? For you leave military chiefs in power for a very long time, even when they seem not to be performing. You fail to inject new blood, new initiatives, new creativity and ingenuity over time, and it just creates problem in a situation where they are not performing. And this has really been the issue, because that human element, the human factor is very, very important. So if in the last week we are seeing changes, brigade commanders are being changed, GOCs are being moved around, of course, it gives you some sense of confidence a little bit that, yes, progress is being made, or you might see some changes, new initiative will be injected into the fight. And I do not also see these terrorists as capable of threatening our existence. Let's remember, first of all, that they are not fighting the military or like I said yesterday, they are fighting Nigeria as a country. And I do not think they can defeat, an army as organized as the Nigerian army, but it's just because they use asymmetrical, scorched-earth guerrilla tactics such that they hit and they run, If they are brave enough, why don't they confront the military in a symmetrical warfare and let's see who will obliterate each other? So there's fear in them already also. That's why they live deep in the forest. That's why they live, in the downtowns. That's why they go to the outskirts of Abuja and disturb villagers. But they cannot come close to the center. They're not as organized as the Taliban, for instance. So I have confidence in all this respect, added with the fact that they've been defeated. Boko Haram have largely been defeated. Most of the time they were fighting in the north. They couldn't take over any of the capital cities. Borno was saved, Maiduguri was saved, Damaturu was saved, Yola was saved, just the countryside, and eventually they were even flushed out of those places. Yes, they are disturbing Kaduna, the downtowns in Kaduna State, but of course they are also being checkmated, irrespective of the fact that we have nearly 39 people still in captivity. So coming to Abuja will be a far cry for them, really. I think I have this optimism, and I just know that at the end of the day, it's just going to be all full of sound and fury, and of course 2023 will come, election will be held, Nigeria will move on, but the onus will be on the next president, to take the bull by the horn, to put all the pieces rightly in the jigsaw, so that we can make improvement on what we have had in the last 7.5 years or so, Steve, Defemi, and Oji.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's just quickly talk about education as we wrap up with the ongoing ASUU strike. Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, came under fire last week after posting a photo of himself studying at Harvard amid the strike, even though he later apologized. Now, this generated a lot of argument, about studying abroad, so much so that Yusuf Dati Baba Ahmed, who is the vice presidential candidate of the Labour Party, is now backing a bill seeking to ban foreign education for children of public officers. Now, what do you make of that?
Well, Oji, let me just give you an insider knowledge. I do know, because he's my boss, that first of all, that for the vice presidential candidate of the Labour Party, he suffered some misrepresentation in the last couple of weeks, where you have, some people parroting his Twitter handle, on Facebook, he's been misrepresented. The things that he didn't say, they've said he said them, They have suffered this so much, and, the quotation we are making around him, it may not even be, he may not have said it, and these people are so brilliant, they are so clever, that they will just make that portrayal, make those quotations look as if it's actually coming from him. But, of course, he hasn't said 70 or 80% of those things that they said he said, as the case could be. But having said that, to the issue of education, well, it's very unfortunate, that the picture of the deputy speaker came into the public place. There's nothing wrong with getting more knowledge, and if you can afford it, it's fine anywhere in the world. But what matters is, how you now put this into the public sphere. Remembering that you are holding a very strategic public position. It's very difficult for people to believe, and not to believe that you are circumventing procedure in a situation where there's huge trust deficits, between the leaders and the led. How would you convince them that you're not using public funds to go for that expensive program in a world-class university like Harvard, even if it's your own resources that you are using? So if I were the speaker, for instance, I'll probably just have gone quietly, get refreshed, attend that retreat, that workshop, as the case could be, and I keep away from photography. After all, the knowledge is supposed to be for me. I can demonstrate it by the time I'm making improvement in my pronouncement. I do not have to publicize it. Sometimes that's the disadvantage of publicity, and that's the downside of the age of the big brother, the age of social media, or more limited, unbridled exposure that we are having, but we have to be restrictive as well. We have to be discerning, to know when we should go public and when we shouldn't go public. Some of these things can be damaging to our reputation. Now you begin to apologize several times, when apologies become too much as well, it's not good. But the speaker is, I want to say, a very fine gentleman. He speaks very well. I'm very impressed with his communication skills as a communication student, and largely polished, and I expect him to do better next time. But since he has apologized, we should just let this go and look forward to how we can improve our own education system, how government can resolve the crisis without sue, and how our students can be made to resume classes as soon as possible, because they are losing a lot compared to what private universities are offering, urging.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Adeniyi, for joining us on the morning show this morning. I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you, Prof.
Thanks very much.